Hey guys, Axial GT here. Today's Q&A day. Let's try to have a little fun with this, and that way you can learn who's behind all these crappy videos that you watch. Let's get into this. Now before we get started, if I should happen to murder somebody's name, I'm sincerely sorry. Everybody pronounces things differently, especially all around the world and even in this country. So, my apologies up front. And secondly, some of these questions came from DMs on Twitter, which they never actually said if I could use their names or not, so I'm going to actually leave them anonymous. Now to start this off, the first question comes from Ryan, and he asks, my question to you is, if you build your own gaming rig, how often do you recommend upgrading any components to keep up with modern games? Obviously, I realize that this has many factors to consider, but I suppose in general. And you're right, there is a lot of factors to consider. But what I usually do when I help people pick out the parts for their next PC, I tell them to get as much as they can afford, because that prolongs what you have to upgrade to later. When it comes to gaming, a lot of it's only personal preference. Can you stand playing at 60 FPS, or do you require more? Now, me personally, it doesn't really matter to me. Yes, I always want to stay above 60 at the very least, but getting 144 hertz out of a game, no, that doesn't really enthuse me. But that's only because I don't play competitively. If you do play competitively, yes, you are going to want those 144 hertz gaming rigs. Now I'll give you an example of the main gaming rig that I use for making YouTube videos or gaming in general. Now this is my PC desk build that I'm still using. I built this desk right before I started my YouTube channel. The only upgrade I've done is changing out the CPU. So now it has a Ryzen 7 3700X, 32 gigabytes of DDR4 3200 MHz memory, and I'm still rocking a 1080 Ti. And all this is tucked away inside my PC desk. I built this desk over a weekend, so yes, it was kind of a rush job, but I still think it turned out pretty good. And there's two reasons why I actually stuck it inside of a desk. One, because I just thought it looked cool, and two, it actually saves a lot of space. Now you can purchase PC desks for anywhere between $500 to $1,000, but I didn't want to go that route because I just thought that was ludicrous to spend that much. I built all this for less than $150. And like I said, I'm still rocking the 1080 Ti, which has worked fine for me. Did I think about going to a 2080 Ti? Yeah, sure I did. But the price is what got me. See, I'm from the camp that I actually think that NVIDIA price gouged the shit out of everybody with the 2080 Ti. Now a lot of the big YouTubers kind of brushed over this and swept it under the rug. Or said, no, it's because of the tensor cores. Well, no, that's actually bullshit. And I'll prove it. This here is a graph with all the launch dates and MSRPs of the graphics cards that have launched since 2000. Mainly I want to concentrate on these Ti models. Now in 2013, we had the 780 Ti launching for $700. And in June of 2015, we had the 980 Ti for $650. Then the beginning of 2017, we had the 1080 Ti for $700. Now the 1080 Ti did have a very interesting launch. It was around the same time as the Bitcoin craze, where you couldn't even buy a graphics card. So due to supply and demand, the 1080 Ti wound up costing between $1,000 and $1,100. Keep that price in mind. That's what it was going for also on NVIDIA's website. And NVIDIA also is also making record profits at this time. Then we all know the Bitcoin bubble burst, and we could all buy graphics cards again. Then we have the launch of the 2080 Ti, and what did NVIDIA do? They launched it at the same price of the price they were getting for the 1080 Ti, $1,100. And yes, I've seen all the charts and all the graphs and all the paperwork on what it takes to make a 2080 Ti. And no, it does not justify the increase in cost from one generation to the next. What else kind of proves this theory? Well, it's the launch of the new 3080, which is the new flagship. And the price it launched at was right back down where it should be. Now, even if they do have increased performance, I understand that they are going to charge a premium. I understand that. No big deal. But charging $1,100 for a video card? No. I was actually only expecting maybe $100 to $150 increase over the 1080 Ti. So that would have put it at $850. So it does look like NVIDIA screwed everybody with the 2000 series graphics cards. But that's just my opinion. Now I kind of got a little bit off topic, but to answer Ryan's question, it mainly depends on where you start at, where your starting point is. Let's say you were actually to build one right now, the ultimate gaming rig, and you were to start off with a 3700X and a 3080. That PC would be an excellent choice. because you'll definitely be over 60 FPS, probably maxing out a lot of games, and it will probably last you 3 to 5 years before you start running into issues. But all this does kind of lead into the next question. Archangel M127 asked me this: any thoughts on the RTX 3080 versus the 3090? Leaving money aside, is there any appreciable difference for a gamer with an otherwise juiced rig? Well, with leaving the money aside, that's kind of easy to answer. If I had an infinite amount of money, yeah, I'd go with the 3090. But is it worth the extra cost? No, definitely not. And I definitely wouldn't believe the hype that Nvidia put out that it's for 8K gaming. It's not. That's just a bullshit marketing tactic to get people to buy them. With a small performance increase over the 3080, the 3090 is just not worth the price or the board it's actually printed on. But yeah, if my pockets were infinitely deep, yes, I would buy a 3090, even though the performance isn't there. At least to justify the cost of purchasing one. And at the time of making this video, with the announcement of AMD's Big Navi, I actually find that more of a compelling purchase. Now the next question is from Joseph Simon. What do you think the chances are of AMD taking the gaming crown from Intel with the next generation CPUs? Now that, Mr. Simon, is a very easy question to answer. Yes, I do think they'll take the gaming crown. They've taken all the other crowns, and I think this generation is where you're going to see AMD really step it up and go blow for blow with Intel in gaming. Now I don't think this will go on forever. Intel will come back. But what I'm more excited about is the competition. The competition means we all win. Because once you have competition on the high end, you'll have more competitive pricing for everybody's CPUs. Intel's biggest thing, where they really screwed up, they've kept their prices jacked up so high for so long that it was kind of infuriating when going to build a new PC for the high end. Now with Zen 3 coming along, now they'll actually go blow for blow, which I'm really excited to see. Now Wally Ram asked, what are the specs for my first gaming PC? Well, that's actually hard to answer, because you have to know a little bit of history of Axial GT. So let's run through a little short list. This won't take long. My first PC was a TRS-80, also known as the Trash 80. I got this computer in 1982, and I was actually 7 years old. And that's when I started my life actually learning how to program. Now it was just basic programming, but not bad for a 7-year-old. Then of course I went through the 286, the 386, then the 486. And sometime around the mid-90s, I'd graduated to a computer with the Intel's MMX chip in it. This was actually the first computer I ever overclocked, taking it from 200 MHz to 233 MHz. Now overclocking back then was a little harder than it is today. You had to deal with the front side bus, and you also had to deal with dip switches, or jumper pins. My first modern day PC had some stuff I threw together, and it was back when the first time when AMD got on top of Intel. It had the AMD Athlon 4000 Plus in it, and the 8800 GTS, the 640 megabyte model. Now up until this point, this is when I started building computers for other people. This was somewhere around the early 2000s. And once I started that, I wound up building a PC from every generation of CPU, from Intel to AMD, depending on what anybody wanted, and the price and budget they had. I built PCs with Celerons, some Bulldozers, some Phenoms, and some Devil Canyon computers. But that really all changed once Ryzen hit. I might sound like an AMD fanboy. Yeah, I kind of do root for the underdog. But that's not really what drives me. It's the price and performance of each CPU. And right now, Ryzen seems to be on top. So that's what I recommend and build the most of. Now I'm going to wrap up this Q&A video right here. Be sure to stay tuned for part 2. I decided to do 2 parts because it'd be 20 to 25 minutes for one video. And most people are not going to watch that. So this Q&A video has a sequel. But if you liked the video, be sure to like and subscribe for future Axial GT content. The subscribe button is right down here. And it looks like this. But I appreciate you watching. Until next time, I am out of here. You all have a good one.